John is taking a trip on his bucket list, so he sends his greetings from Custer State Park, where he's on a trip, a cycling trip with longtime buddies. He sent a picture this morning. His bicycle is laying on the ground, and on the horizon is a herd of buffaloes. So as a true Buff fan, he stayed away from them, didn't get in front of them, but does send his greetings. So we'll begin the program with Kitty DeKeefer and doing our pledge and the four-way test. Kitty, please.
Okay, so please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And of the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Kitty. We appreciate you and your rejoining of our club. It's been wonderful. At this point, I look like I've lost my screen. So Fred, if you can get me back on my screen. We'd like to go to Gary Cron for an induction of new bridge member, Cliff Cron.
It's a true honor to be a co-sponsor and to introduce to you today Dr. Cliff Cron as a new red badge, but returning Boulder Rotary Club member. Cliff is a truly impressive person, as you will discover if you check out his bio on his member profile page on our club website. Today, I just have time though to highlight a few key aspects of his very full life. Both of Cliff's parents were born in Norway and came to the US after World War II. Cliff's 93-year-old mother currently resides at Fraser Meadows Memory Care Center. Cliff himself was born and raised in New England and moved to Boulder in '96. His wife of 30 years, Dr. Nandy Frazazzo, is a psychiatrist in Boulder, and they have 3 kids, all in their 20s, and all of whom attended Fairview High. Dr. Gronseth is triple boarded in physical medicine and rehabilitation, electrodiagnostic medicine, and pain medicine. He's the co-founder and managing partner of this Spine West here, which is the largest physical medicine and rehabilitation private practice in Boulder, in Colorado actually. And they specialize in spine and sports medicine, providing outpatient non-surgical orthopedic care. He's also founder and chair of the Niyagi Project, which stands for Now You Are the Group's Interests, which is a Boulder-based not-for-profit focused on saving pregnant women's lives in forgotten corners of the world by teaching ultrasound to remote healthcare workers. Now, Cliff and the project have worked already in Nepal and Haiti, and they have future projects planned already in Nicaragua and East Africa. Cliff himself enjoys exercise, especially running, sculling, and biking, and is one of several Boulder Rotary Club members who participate in Dancing with the Boulder Stars, which is a fundraiser for the YWCA of Boulder County. So now please help me welcome Cliff Gronseth as our newest red badge to Boulder Rotary Club.
Thank you, Gary, and welcome, Cliff. There was a bit of a debate. There were so many people that wanted to sponsor you. We had to just settle for Gary Cron. As we frequently say, he cons everybody into this club, and we're grateful for that support. So welcome back, Cliff. We look forward to having you involved again here. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much.
So today's program, if you remember last week, we did have a rather patriotic beginning and ending of our program on the Friday before Memorial Weekend. We had Max McNutt, who is a trumpet student, a grad student at CU, playing from his studio in Ohio. He was the one playing America the Beautiful, and he concluded with taps. His trumpet professor, who is Ryan Gardner, and Ryan forwarded this next piece for us. And Ryan was also able to attend last week. His comment back was he was so impressed with all the things that this club does, all the support and involvement in so many different places and ways. And it was a wonderful opportunity for him to experience Boulder Rotary and also for his student to participate in that particular patriotic of meetings for us. Well, next, after this short interlude, we're going to have President-elect Sally Brown, who will be giving us her views of this coming year. And then she has a guest with her, Tom Barron. He asked to be called Tom. We look forward to that. This will be a moderated series of questions after that. And then we'll have our infamous and wonderful concluding with our announcements. So as you can see, brief view of the agenda here. We're going to now go to this trumpet ensemble. And it seemed to us in our planning meeting this week that this was the most appropriate way to provide a musical introduction to our President-elect Sally Brown. So Fred, if you would do the honors, and let's go for this trumpet ensemble, please. That would take some doing for that, and we're most grateful. So Sally, in some respects, needs own introduction, but she absolutely does need an introduction. You've seen her behind her mask, helping others with their hands. You've seen her instigating or initiating a food drive that was an incredibly wonderful and well-received one in support of Sister Carmen. But there are a lot more little details, and I think that slide will be coming up momentarily. It gives you some more information about Sally. As soon as that slide comes up, we'll see what we have to say about Sally here. We can tell you that she's been a member since 2013, Paul Harris Fellow 4, member of Club 1919, and received the Quick Start Award back in 2013. Also received the International Human Rights Award winner from the United Nations Advocates of Boulder County. She earned her bachelor's in occupational therapy from Wayne State University and an MBA from Troy State University. So Sally, we look forward to your comments and thoughts about this Rotary year ahead and a world transformed in our role. So Sally, take it away.
Thank you so much, Marty. Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I was in front of you all or not yet, but thank you, Boulder Rotary, for having me here today. And I just can't say enough about how inspiring you all are to me. And I'm so happy to be working with you all this year as our world has changed, as Marty was saying. So first of all, Fred, if you wouldn't mind putting up the slide, and then also instead of saying next, Fred, I'd like to just kind of wave if that would be okay. Okay. For those of you who do not know me, I'm the Director of Marketing and Therapy for Boulder Center for Orthopedics, and I treat patients with upper extremity injuries. So every day I work with some really high-level athletes who were traveling along on a path when something suddenly snuck up on them and it changed, it took them on a detour, changed their life. So for the highest level athlete, this can be really devastating. They're used to climbing incredible cliffs. One more. There you go. And biking steep climbs. Instructing others in fitness. Or high-level martial arts. So celebrating the small steps of recovery can be so very humbling and devastating for this type of athlete. Being able to button your pants or put on a shirt as a goal can be devastating and difficult for these high-level athletes to celebrate. So in a way, I see us having a detour this year as Boulder Rotary. We are a club that's prided ourselves on international work. Wells in Nicaragua, wells in Kenya, peace programs in Palestine, supporting ICAMP in hospitals and respirators in India, furnishing an orphanage in Nepal, helping to repair an earthquake-damaged school in Chile, sending used medical and dental equipment to Mexico hospitals after an earthquake, and of course, polio immunization worldwide. So this year is going to look a little different for us, and we are now tasked with looking closer to home in our own community to see what we need here and what our neighbors need, and even that must be done in a safe social distance. So we're going to have to take pride and celebrate our food drives and our tree planting and things that in another year we might have thought of as a small project because we are that high-level athlete. So this year, I'm calling on each and every one of you to join a committee and to be engaged in Rotary. I'm calling on every one of you to have your eyes and your ears open when you're around your neighbors or you're driving down the street. And if you see a need, you're going to let us know about it. So what we can try to do is help our community. So the one thing you can count on for this year is change. So many of you know my husband, Daryl Brown, and he was Rotary president during 2013, the year of the flood. So we lost our Rotary home that year, and it was all hands on deck. We asked everybody to get out there and help us find a new home. People were out there helping rip their neighbors' carpets out. And then, of course, we volunteered up at Calwood to try to help up there as well. But you know what happened that year was that you were all available and you all answered the call, even though Rotary looked different that year as well. So now I'd like to introduce the theme for this year. Rotary opens opportunities. And here is our banner. Stay there, okay. So we could look at this year as having many closed doors, but when the pandemic hit us worldwide, our ability to network is what is making Rotary unique and making it successful. And I think that is what Holger Knack, our incoming Rotary International president, was thinking about when he picked this theme, not necessarily about the pandemic, but about all of our networking and what we can do just even from our homes. So far during this pandemic, we have helped to feed the front lines by raising over $9,000 and support not only our frontline workers, but our first responders. We have also, and our small business restaurants and caterers. We have held 2 food drives, which brought in over 10,000 pounds of food for our community and over $7,000 to Sister Carmen Community Center. Our 3rd food drive is on June 13th. And the most important thing you can do to help out with this is get the word out. So if you're on social media, please share all the posts. If you have an email to your friends, let them know on June 13th to come to the JCC and help us out with our food drive. The need in our community is huge, and that is something we can do that's really safe, and it's going to help a ton of people that we probably will never meet. So I'm calling on all of you to help with this. You can open opportunities to do good work in our community this year, and I'm calling on each of you to celebrate our small accomplishments as Rotary and the world recovers. We will be looking ahead to the horizon when we can all meet together in person and safely and open the doors to the JCC. Then we can launch our high-level projects that take us overseas and traveling the world, doing good in the world, and living a meaningful life. So speaking of living a meaningful life, I would like to introduce you to my guest today, TA Barron, Tom Barron. And he is a Boulderite who is an inspiration to me, and I know will inspire all of us today as we reach out into our communities to do good work this year and open up opportunities. Tom is an award-winning author of more than 30 highly acclaimed books, many of which are international bestsellers. His books include the Merlin saga, now being developed into a feature film by Disney, The Great Tree of Avalon, a New York Times best-selling series, The Ancient One, The Tale of a Brave Girl in a Magical Tree, The Hero's Trail, nonfiction stories of courageous kids, Young Heroes, in 2000, he founded the Gloria Barron Prize for Heroes, national award that honors outstanding young people who help their communities or the environment. Each year, the award honors 25 inspiring public-spirited kids from diverse backgrounds. When not writing or speaking, Tom serves on many boards, including Princeton University, where he helped to create the Princeton Environmental Institute and the Wilderness Society, which recently honored him with its highest award for conservation work. Please welcome Tom Barron. Hi, Tom.
Hi, Sally.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
You are so welcome, and it's an honor. I am really delighted to be here with all of you. Hi, everybody. I want to give a special hello to my longtime friend and neighbor, Kitty DeKeefer. And I also want to make sure that all of you realize just what an awesome new president you have. Sally Brown is just terrific, and I'm sure she's going to be a fabulous leader for Rotary. By the way, it might interest you to know my dad was a Rotary Club member for more than 50 years. And so he had a great association and lots of longtime friends and business associates and people throughout his life were from Rotary. So it's great to be here.
Wonderful. So, Tom, can you tell me a little bit about Merlin? I personally have read your book, and I can tell Can you tell us about pitfalls that Merlin experienced and how he found inspiration and opened opportunities?
Well, before I do that, actually, Sally, I actually want to back up for a moment and talk about the bizarre path that I've taken to get to do what I do now, because it's actually a little more crazy, and I would argue maybe just as adventurous as this character Merlin, because it might be actually interesting for folks. I always had a dream to be a writer, and even when I was a high school kid here in Colorado, I would think about the idea of writing a novel up in a mountain cabin, looking out at the Maroon Bells Wilderness or some equally wonderful place, or Long's Peak, and writing a book. And I had that dream, and when I, after college, got a chance to study abroad for a little bit, I wrote my first novel. And I guess you could say it had a terrific reception. I sent it around to 32 publishers, and pretty quickly I got 32 rejections. So it was a unanimous reception. So that made me take a plan B, and that's why I went into business, into the venture capital business for about a decade. But the funny thing was that I would still get up early in the morning before putting on my suit and going to the office. I would get up early and just sit at the little kitchen table and write. And I'd write character sketches of the people I had met the day before, or I'd write poems, or I'd write story ideas. And it really pretty clearly dawned on me that there's something wrong with this picture. So here I am almost a decade after all those rejections, but I'm still writing. And it's one of the happiest times of my day. So by this point, I was president of the company, and we were coming up to our annual meeting with the shareholders. And the night before, I had a long conversation with my wonderful wife, Curry, and made a decision, and then had the fun next day of walking in and shocking my partners and saying, hello, the numbers are great, things are trending up, but I quit. And contrary to what they expected, I wasn't going to go join Morgan Stanley or somebody. I said, I'm going to move back to Colorado. The business was in New York City, and just see if I can write a book or two that maybe somebody would write, maybe somebody would read. This is a dream, and I've got to follow it. It's just too clearly a passion that I have. And they, as you can imagine, they thought I was completely nuts. People gave me the business cards of their therapists and things like that. But anyway, fast forward, that was 25 years ago, and as you've heard, more than 30 books ago, and it's been a wonderful life here in Boulder. But it gives me real clarity when I'm talking, especially to young people, to urge them to follow their dreams. There's no other reason we are here than to do what's in our hearts and hopefully make the world a better place in the process. So I even tell kids and adults, but mostly I see young people, and I tell them, just try this on. See your life as a story, but it's a story that you get to author. So why not make it the very best story you possibly can? And that's really the approach. And honestly, I saw that same idea reflected in those 4 rules that you showed at the very beginning of the meeting. So Rotary is inspired by those very same ideals, doing what we can with our lives and trying to make the world a better place. So Sally, if you'd still like me to talk about Merlin, I'm happy to do that.
Yes, please.
Well, look, Merlin always intrigued me as a character. Of all the characters in Arthurian lore, he's the one who can talk with all people of all backgrounds and descriptions in all of the Arthurian cycle of myth, the crystal cave, the sword and the stone, all those stories. Merlin is the one person who can talk to the beggar in the street, or the Archbishop of Canterbury, or King Arthur's court. He can also go sit on a hillside and put his arm around an old gray wolf who's his friend. He's the one character who can speak with everyone, any description. And that kind of universality makes him a very unique character. He's and when you think about it, that character arose from 5th and 6th century Britain in the oral traditions. That's where it began. And that was about the roughest time that the earth has ever seen, even including the time we're in right now. The plague had run through 3 times in the century before. The Romans had left Britain, so there was chaos everywhere. Mercenaries were burning towns to the ground. There was a polyglot of languages. There were fear and disease and vagabonds everywhere. It was a terrible, tough time. And yet to have out of that become this very hopeful story of a great wizard who would become the mentor of a young king named Arthur. I've always found that very moving. And then the other thing about Merlin that's always intrigued me is that he got his greatest inspiration from nature, from the natural world all around us. And so honestly, I'm the same way. So that's part of why he's always appealed to me. What I realized about 20 years ago is that everybody knows the character Merlin. All around the world, he's probably one of the most beloved known characters in story because of this 1,500 years of story that people have been telling about him and singing about him. But there was a big gap in the lore about his youth. When he was a young man, there were almost no stories. He's always the ancient wizard with the long beard and the staff and, you know, the pointy hat and everything else. And he's wonderfully wise, and he has a quirky sense of humor. And as I said, he gets his greatest inspiration from nature, just like I do. And yet we didn't know him when he was a young man. So I decided to tell that story. And that was now 20 years ago, and and a lot of books about Merlin ago, and let us hope a movie in the works at Disney ago. So, but it's really, to me, it was all about, there's this beautiful tapestry of myth about Merlin, but it had a hole in it, a big hole, about when he was a kid. And honestly, I think it's one of the most exciting times of anyone's life, but it's of his life particularly, because that's when he would discover his agency and his ability to make a difference in the world. And that's really, honestly, the core value in all of my Merlin books is the idea that every person, no matter what background or description, every person can make a difference. And that's why the stories of Merlin that I tell, book one, which is this one, this is the one the movie is going to be based on. Book one of the Merlin saga starts not with a great powerful wizard, but with a half-drowned boy who washes ashore. On the very first page of that book, he washes ashore on this rocky, harsh coastline, hits his head, and he's half drowned. He's barely alive. He's so weak he can't even sit up. And then when he finally does, and the seagulls are screeching all around him, he realizes that worse even than surviving some sort of shipwreck and landing where he is that he has no memory at all. So he has no idea who he is, doesn't even remember his own name. So that's about as low as you can get. No name, no identity, no history. But that kid has inside him a little tiny spark of a hero. And if he can just survive that day and the days to come, which are a little sketchy, that's one great thing about fantasy adventure. Anything is possible. But if he can just survive that spark of the hero in him, will grow into a huge bonfire, and he'll become the great wizard Merlin, the greatest wizard of all times.
Can you tell us about the 7 wisdoms of Merlin?
Sure. Sally is referring to this book, which is actually a book I didn't expect to be a book. It was a speech, a graduation speech that I gave at a university, and I was searching for a different way to give a graduation speech that might actually be really unusual and engaging for the young people in the audience. And while I had some things I really wanted to say to these bright young people, I didn't want to be preachy about it. And so I realized, you know, what I should just do is tell a story. So what I did was actually say, okay, you're out walking in the English countryside and you happen to fall into Merlin's crystal cave. And Merlin, the old wizard, is there, and he says, okay, I'm happy to answer any question you have. And you say, because you're a bright young lad or lass, you say, well, tell me, great wizard, tell me how to live a meaningful life. And Merlin, at that point, he picks up his mobile phone and tries to dial Sally Brown and ask her how he should answer that question. But Sally's not available. She's helping heal somebody's hand. So Merlin has to deal with it himself. And he says, well, you know what? That's a big question, how to live a meaningful life. But you're lucky because the answer has just 7 words. And they're the 7 most powerful, magical words in the universe. And so then I went into just giving a little bit of thought about all 7 of the words. Now, the words in this book are ones that I had to really think hard about. How do you just boil wisdom down to 7 words? So I will only tell you that the first word is gratitude. And the last word is love. And one of the most important words, they're all important, but one of the most important ones, especially to me these days, because of these difficult, challenging times we're in right now, I find the word that comes to me most often these days is courage. And it's really about digging deep and having the faith and conviction that your life does matter, that your values are important, and going out in the world and trying to make those values real. And Sally, if you would like, I'd be happy at some point to read a little bit about what Merlin said about courage, but I don't want to derail you from whatever else you would like me to do.
No, we'd love to hear that. That would be great.
I just think it's probably the word these days that's most appropriate. Honestly, it is for me. My motto these days, by the way, is real simple. It's stay positive, test negative. So I would have put that in the Merlin book if I had known about it then. But all right. So here's what the book says about the word courage. Courage is essential. How else can we dream of who we can become and what we want for the world? And it also takes courage to turn those dreams into reality. You see, life can have great meaning, but only if we discover that meaning for ourselves. Meaning can't be bought in any store, and it can't be handed down like a coat that someone tells you will fit you perfectly before you've even tried it on. No, meaning must be sought and earned and made one's own, all of which requires courage. Have you ever stopped to wonder why we have the free will to make our own choices? Some of them wise and gracious, some of them just plain foolish, some of them catastrophically bad. I know I've made a few of those. Because our choices matter, that's why. They define who we are, what values we live by, what aspirations we honor. And here's the key point. If our choices matter, then we matter. Think of your life as a story of which you are the author. Using whatever materials you have and whatever inspiration you find, make it a story that truly belongs to you. Tell it with honesty, tell it with passion, and make it the very, very best story you can.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I know that you love the environment and that you also love working with kids. So how do you combine all 3 of those, which I know you do, by taking them trekking and working on environmental activities and obviously winning awards and starting a wilderness society. So how do you use your books and to inspire youth and combine all three of your passions?
Sally, you know, I don't think there's any magic to it. I just try to do what I love and do it with all the energy I'm blessed to have. And I'm just one person in this chain of activities. I honestly get more inspiration from those young people than they ever get from me. I love the way young people ask tough questions. I love their high ideals. I love their sense of humor. And I'm lucky enough to have a passel of kids of my own who've always kept me fresh with their sense of humor, their sense of wonder. And by the way, they're my toughest critics as a writer. If I can possibly keep the attention of 5 kids who are brighter than I am at the breakfast table when everybody's sleepy and grumpy and has to get out the door to go to school, and tell us a little story that gets their attention, gets them leaning forward, I know it's going to work. So they're much tougher than the New York Times book reviewers are. At the same time, I think that the most important thing we can do right now, the Earth, our planet that sustains us and nurtures us, is in trouble. It's in deep trouble. I think it's very clear that things like a pandemic only happen when we have disturbed the balance between nature and human impacts. And there's way too much destabilization happening in all the complicated ecosystems, and the world we live in needs humans to rise to a level of good stewardship and to be really our very best selves. We have abundant lore and inspiration about that. I think about all the stories that have been told over the centuries, over the generations, where there's a responsibility to take care of Mother Earth. And that's in every tradition. It's in Greek myths, it's in the Native American tales, it's in Swahili stories or Aboriginal tales, or any of the great tales that have stood the test of time. It's even found in the great religions of the world. When you take a story, I'll just use one example. I thought the greatest of all stories ever told is the story of Noah's Ark. And it is, first and foremost, of course, a story about faith and about belief and pursuing that faith. But it's also an environmental fable. When you think about Noah's Ark, think about the fact that God made Noah go through a whole lot of trouble to try to save 2 of every kind of creature. 2 of every species were welcomed onto that ark. And all I can say is if God asked Noah to go through all of that trouble to protect 2 of every kind of creature, our fellow creatures, how can we do anything less?
That's awesome. And it's amazing. And so can you tell us about any environmental projects you're working on right now?
Well, I'm working very hard with lots of different environmental groups. I'm a big fan of some of the local groups as well as some of the national groups. A great one is Earth Justice, that is holding the line on our nation's environmental laws that are under siege right now, unfortunately. I also will tell you that it's the small things that often make the biggest, longer term impact. I just yesterday had the judges meeting for that prize that you mentioned, the prize where I give a scholarship to the winners of this prize that I named after my mother. That's why it's called the Gloria Barron Prize for Young Heroes. And 25 outstanding young people a year we honor from all different backgrounds. My wonderful assistant, Jenny, who's on this call, was also instrumental in making the prize come together for the judges meeting this year. And we had half of those 25 are kids who have done something directly for the environment. The other half are kids who have done something more humanitarian. Those kids who have done things for the environment there's a 9-year-old girl who has dedicated her last 4 years to getting recycled materials into schools and to ban styrofoam from lunchrooms. And she has just prevailed in Jefferson County, where there's about 80,000 students. There's no more styrofoam lunch trays in Jeffco schools because of this 9-year-old girl. There are kids who've cleaned up wetlands in their local community's backyard. There are kids who have worked to address the use of plastics and reduce plastics in the oceans. There are kids who are inventing devices that can produce clean water much more cheaply in third world countries and remote parts of this country. There are kids doing all these wonderful things. And I just want to pause to say, forget everything I've said today. Please just give 1 minute to listening to these wonderful young people. And I promise you, it will renew your hope in the world. There's a lot of reasons for being upset, doubtful, even sometimes despairing in today's world. But if you just simply go to my website, tabarron.com, and click on the Young Heroes tab, that will take you to the Gloria Barron Prize for Young Heroes. Or you could Google Gloria Barron Prize for Young Heroes. Either way, go there and just click on Meet the Winners and scroll through a few of these stories of these wonderful, amazing kids age 8 to 18 who are absolutely making a difference in the world, in their backyards or in the wider world. It's awesome. And I promise you, they will renew your hope. They do mine all the time.
Tom, thank you so much. You are making a difference in the world, and you should definitely be a Rotarian. We would always love to have you. I'm going to open it up to some questions, and I think Mike Brady is our moderator for that.
I'm the moderator of the questions. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Sally. And our first question is going to go to Cassidy Murphy. Cassidy, you're on.
Hey, Sally. Thank you for both being here. And my question is for you, which is, you started your presentation talking about change and how the next year is all about change. Are you thinking just about the COVID-19 pandemic? What kind of changes were you hoping to see?
Oh, well, I would hope to see not the kind of changes I think are going to happen, but I think we're going to have a recession. I think we're going to be apart for a while. And I think obviously we've got people rioting today, and we have a lot of peace building that needs to happen. So the things that I think I would love to see this year is for our wonderful committees that are already together and working on some of these things, like the Peace Committee and the Preserve Planet Earth, and of course our wonderful behavioral health. All of those things will be super important this year to help in our community. But I'm hoping that Rotary, which always takes action, will be able to do as much as we possibly can in a safe way this year. And I can't again wait until we can all be together. But I know we can do a lot of work even from our homes.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Cassidy. Wonderful question. Bill Anderson, you're up.
Hi, Sally. ITA, this question is for Sally. Sally, I'm curious, a wise person was posing the question recently. in terms of how we approach this next year, given all that's going on, how do you see us prioritizing local versus international or broader projects? Do you think that we should approach this year in a more locally focused way than we perhaps normally do? Or should we continue to balance in the same way that we have in the past?
You know, I don't think that we're going to be able to travel anytime soon. So a lot of those international projects that we love to do, I just don't even know they'll be possible. I'm hoping, you know, January, Chad and I are talking about, you know, getting together and coming up with what is the next 3-year plan for Rotary, but we won't do that till January. But I do think that we're going to see a lot of need right here. We already are. The food banks are, you know, having a hard time keeping up with the need. And, you know, we heard last week about the children who are having hard times because they can't, you know, go to their meetings and have, you know, inspiration for them to continue living a life without drugs or alcohol. And, you know, I think that that's going to be, you know, we will definitely need to look around here. And I think the need is going to be there for us to help with.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Merrill Blustrom, you have a question.
Yes. First of all, just Sally, thank you so much for entering and being our president. I know it's going to be a big job, especially as you already have a job. So I think you'll be a wonderful president. I'm very excited about your tenure in office. Having said that, I'm also, thank you, Tom, for speaking to us and giving that inspiring talk. Thank you very much. I do have a question of Tom. I've long been a fan of J.R.R. Tolkien, as I too am a lover of language, especially how it's a medium that's beautifully designed for telling stories, both nonfiction and fiction. So could you compare Merlin to Tolkien's Gandalf, especially as it relates to the stories of Merlin that you tell?
Sure. What a wonderful, thoughtful question. I too am an enduring fan of Tolkien. In fact, I'll go a step further. I've always felt that Tolkien sets the bar for all of us who would like to contribute to the world of fantasy and fantasy stories. I think he understood better than anybody has ever understood how to make characters come to life and how to bend the rules of our world to create a world where great big questions can be asked, but in a dramatic and adventurous and fun way, as well as to write about that so mellifluously and beautifully. It's really a thrill. So I'm a great fan of Tolkien. I would also I would say now, as to Merlin, I don't think there's any question that Gandalf is the Merlin character in the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit books. Merlin did come first. Merlin was around, as I said, since the 5th, 6th century AD, and then those oral traditions were later put down in the Welsh tales that have been called the Mabinogion. Many of you are familiar with that, I'm sure, set down by the Celtic monks in the 8th, 9th, 10th centuries. Ultimately, those stories have grown, and you have Geoffrey of Monmouth and Le Morte d'Arthur and Sword in the Stone, and then you have everybody from Shakespeare to Tennyson to little old me adding new stories into that grand tradition. But always Merlin was right there in the center. And there's even disputes among historians whether he was a real person before he became a historical character, before he became the mythic character. Personally, I don't care because the truth is that Merlin lives in our hearts and minds as a great inspiration. And he's become that figure in many stories. I think Gandalf is the Merlin in Tolkien's story, just in the same way that Dumbledore is the Merlin figure in all the Harry Potter stories. If you look at any number of other great storytellers like C.S. Lewis, any number of others, there's very often a Merlin character. And
Yeah.
I think that's just an echo of the power and inspiration of this character. And as I said before, I think it comes from the values he stands for, that universality, that idea that all people and all creatures are connected, and at the same time, the inspiration that we can get from nature if we just take care of her.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Good question, Meryl. John and Lena, you have a question.
Thank you, Mike. First, Sally, I'm just really looking forward to your leadership this next year. Len and I, both as past presidents, know that you will just do a wonderful job in terms of leading us as we move forward. Tom, I was absolutely fascinated by your personal reflections and the decision that you had made to leave the New York job. I guess my question is, after making that decision, you know, kind of what were the struggles? I mean, how long did it take you to, you know, really, you know, publish that first book? And did you ever have any second thoughts after you had made this decision to follow your passion?
Thanks for asking. Yes, of course. I had struggles. It took me a couple of years to figure out that I could write a story and actually find a way to get it published. And fortunately, I had put a little bit of walking money in the bank after that first job so that I could devote myself to that. Mm-hmm. I kept my other side of life going just in case it didn't work. I agreed to be the person who shepherded the Western businesses that we had invested in for a couple of years. And I did that while I was trying to bang out that first novel. But the truth is that as tricky as that was, I knew I had to do it. People ask me often, was it scary to leave a paying job and see if you could actually do something totally different? Which, by the way, I had no evidence that I could do. All I had was that stack of rejection letters from that first novel, which, by the way, deserved to get rejected. I now know about writing a story to know there was a good reason that everybody told me to go try something different. But of course it was scary. But here's the really important point to answer your question. As scary as it is to make change in our lives, to change jobs, to change towns, to change careers, whatever we change, it's always scary. But to me, that is never as scary as not following something that's really in your heart, that you really truly know you need to do. Because I put it this way: and this was a vision that occurred to me when I was there in my 30s trying to make this decision. I thought about, okay, Tom Barron, you're at the very end of your days. You're at the end of your life. Say you're 90 years old, you're sitting on your front porch, you've had a perfectly good life, you've been president of this business for a long time, you've had a good life. But in that moment of clarity at the end of my life, if I realized, you know, the hourglass of my life has just about run through, all the sand is almost gone, and I know I had a dream. I had this yearning to see if I could actually be a writer, but I never had the courage to try it. That, to me, was a far more frightening thought than going out there, quitting my job, seeing if I could be a writer, and maybe failing. Well, at least I would have known that I had tried.
Yeah.
And so I'm really saying that the nightmare to me was coming to the end of this wonderful, blessed gift that we all have, which is our time. And knowing, gosh, I had that dream and I never actually pursued it. That was much more terrifying than the idea struggling a little bit and figuring out that maybe I couldn't do this, but at least I gave it a shot. And then I ended up doing something different in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Tom. And the last question goes to Daryl with the same last name. Suspicious. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, Sally Brown. So right before my president year, I was asked this question, and I've asked it to several of the presidents since then. Because I think it's just a great time to see what you're thinking, and you'll look back and reflect on it as well too. So, what are you looking the most forward to during this year, you personally?
You know, Rotary is always so much of an inspiration to me anyway, so I'm just excited to continue to see what our members do. It's kind of always awe. I'm always in awe of the amazing things that people put together, and so I'm just hoping that we can get back to our high level that we were at, as far as being able to travel the world and do wonderful things and end the pandemic. But I'm just excited to watch it all happen, because I know that it's going to be amazing no matter what.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Chad, you've got something to say?
Yeah, Tom, thank you so much for your words of inspiration. And I think it's important to note that as an organization, we completely agree with you in the fact that the real inspiration is in our youth. Through Interact, through Rotaract, through the Rotary Youth Leadership Awards program, through our scholarships, and then for me personally, through the Youth Exchange program, where I get to interview these kids every day and every year to select them to go abroad. If anybody says that our upcoming generations are not worthy, then they haven't spent time around them. So I completely agree with you on that. In terms of selecting a student to go abroad, one of the things that I most look for in a candidate is maybe a word that you can add to your Merlin list of 7 characters, and that's adaptability. A student who's adaptable usually fares very well abroad, and it's quite obvious. So with that word, I'd like to actually transition here to Sally. We've already seen Sally's ability to adapt and change, because a year ago, you probably never thought that you were going to be in this position under these circumstances. So we've already seen some of that adaptability and change with the Feeding the Front Lines and with the food drives. So I think we're in good hands right now, and could not have the better candidate that we have in you to kind of lead us through these crazy uncharted territories. And I look forward to helping you in any way I can. So thank you both. In your honor, we are going to donate 100 doses of vaccine to the Polio Plus Fund in our Rotary International's efforts to eradicate polio from the planet. So thank you both.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you
Sally,
all.
my apology for, excuse me, go ahead. Tom, you wanted to make a comment?
I just want to thank you all. I'm just honored to be among you, and I think you're doing great things, and I'm very inspired.
Right now, Steve.
Well, come on back. We'd love to have you as a member. You opened that door, and we're going to keep it open.
So as we continue with the meeting, Marty, I just wanted to conclude this. Tom and Sally, will you be available after the meeting concludes for questions?
Unfortunately, I won't. I have to go now to a different thing, but it's been a real delight and an honor to be among you.
And President, yeah. I'm sorry, was that a yes, Sally?
Yes, I can stay.
Okay, great. And then to past President Marty Evans.
Sally, I was going to say, with great apology, I totally skipped over your whole leadership in hand and therapy, and you got me through when I crashed and burned in the garage so that I could get my rings off and on. So my apologies, because that's a significant gift that you've given to so many in the community, and we were so very, very grateful. And we look forward to your leadership for this year. Speaking of the Brown duo, I believe we're ready for the latest of our announcements.
Friday afternoon.
Thank you, John Mozeliak, for getting us going. It's Mark Maloney as RI President and John Sullivan as Boulder Rotary Club President, transitioning in July to Holger Knack as Rotary International President and Sally Brown as Boulder Rotary Club President. Yay, Rotary!
This is the last week of Youth Service Month. So far this month, Fairview High School Interact has made 150 masks that they are donating to CU Boulder essential workers. This time of year, Boulder High School and Fairview High School usually meet together to have a jam fest, but this year they have joined forces to make a donation page to support Voices for Children. So please consider a donation of any amount before May 30th. The link is in the rib.
If you use social media, I tell you what, one of the brightest spots on Facebook is the Boulder Rotary Club site. Make sure and friend us and like us and share. Hey look, Norm can hang out at Cheers again.
Garden to Table still needs help throughout the summer to help weed and water school vegetable gardens. If you want to find out more, look at the rib or contact Charlotte Rome.
I miss the music committee.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build good? Will it better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? When we pay it forward, it will be returned. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build good? Will it better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? When we pay it forward, it will be returned. When we pay it forward, it will be returned.
Jaunty.
The Rotary Foundation is not to build monuments of brick and stone. If we work upon marble, it will perish. If we work on brass, time will efface it. If we rear templates that will crumble into dust, temples. But if we work upon immortal minds, we are engraving on those tablets something that will brighten all eternity.
Those are the words of Arch Clump, who founded the Rotary Foundation.
The Rotary Foundation receives the highest rating for the 13th straight year from Charity Navigator.
Are you a Paul Harris Fellow yet? If not, this is the perfect opportunity for you. The annual Ted Manning Memorial Paul Harris Fellow Match is back on again. Michael Weatherwax is again matching your donation necessary to get you to your first or next Paul Harris Fellow. We have until June 15th, that's about 18 days, and then it closes. Take advantage while you can.
Is it the truth? Is it fair?
Daryl, stop.
That's pretty catchy, though. I never knew dogs could do chemistry, Sally.
And on to next week's program. Join us June 5th for Tom Check, the CU Faculty Nobel Prize winner who shared the 1989 Nobel Prize in Chemistry.
Hey, don't miss it. It's going to be a great program. It's Friday, and I'm as excited as this dog. So, Sally, say it with me now. Have a great weekend.
Thank you once again. It's a little bit ironic. Daryl, you were president in 2013 when the floods came. And we had to move from the Avalon, from Spice to Avalon. And here's Sally, and we get another major challenge in life. So I hope, and I know you both are up to this. Daryl, you were before, and Sally now, but it's a little bit different. We knew when the floods left that there would be rebuilding, and we don't know when this latest will happen, but kudos to you both. Thanks always for that great video that you do. And Daryl for being the past president greeter today. Last week, some of us, or many of us, were part of a poll. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Carl Kurtz, who's going to give us the responses to last week's poll. Carl?
Thank you, Marty. The results of the poll that we conducted at the end of last week's virtual meeting were flashed on the screen. but it was hard to absorb them in the moment. So I want to give you a quick summary of the results. For this and all subsequent slides, the number of responses was 57. That's about 3/4 of those who participated in the virtual meeting. That's a great response rate, and it bodes well for similar future surveys of our members. The full text of this question was, during our virtual meetings, 4 of our 8 main programs have focused on the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. As the pandemic continues and dominates the news, how frequently do you think our main program should focus on the COVID-19 crisis? A little more than half of us said about once a month, and 1 in 3 responded about half the time. This suggests that the pandemic and its effects should remain high on our agenda, but should not be the sole focus of our programming. In survey research, it's hard to get 90% to vote in favor of motherhood and apple pie. With 9 out of 10 of us saying the length of our meetings is about right, we seem to have hit a sweet spot. At the same time, we'll work to tighten the agenda and shorten the length of the meetings a bit. The full text of this question was, at each of our virtual meetings, we have added a coping with COVID-19 segment with advice, ideas, and resources about how to deal with our enforced social distancing. In the future, how often would you like to have such programs? 3/4 of us responded either every other week or once a month, suggesting that we like this programming, but don't want a steady diet of it every week. About 1 in 5 would like to continue these segments every week. Finally, we asked about an offer that Spice of Life has made to provide boxed lunches at a cost of $16 for pickup at 1 of 3 locations in Boulder County. The response was lukewarm, with only 4 in 10 of us saying that we either we are very or somewhat likely to take up this offer. So thank you all for your quick responses to this poll. They're very informative and will aid our program committee as we move forward to schedule virtual meetings in the coming months.
Thank you, Carl, and thanks to all of you who participated. And there will be other polls coming in the future, so we're working on that as well. I've just learned from George Russell that we have a birthday person he would like to introduce and have make some brief comments. George Russell?
Yes, yes. I would like to introduce Alexandro Sachs, who wanted to say some words on his birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Multiple directions, one destination. This represents Rotary for me, service above self. I would like to take this opportunity today on my birthday to thank all of you, my extended Rotary family, for your friendship, and this year in particular, to your great support to our World Community Service Colorado initiative, Clean, Non-Contaminated Water Grant project for the Oglala Lakota Sioux in South Dakota. Thanks to the paddle raiser and the contribution from 19 other additional Rotary clubs, we are able to connect presently 34 homes to clean water. So far, 11 are already completed. We are just short of $36,000 to achieve our master goal of connecting 50 homes, thanks to the dollar-for-dollar matching of the local NGO Running Strong. We are open for ideas how to reach out also to corporate donors. Thank you also to Jancy Campbell for listing our project as of yesterday on our Boulder Rotary Facebook page. I would like to share with you a short poem by Oglala Lakota poet Layli Long Soldier. The structure of the poem called Obligations 2, number 2, offers multiple ways of reading it. Choose your own adventure, kind of. The classic linear way from left to right, or one can choose a different entry path. But each path always passes through grief. Here the horizontal linear reading. As we embrace, resist the future, the present, the past, we work, we struggle, we begin, we fail to understand, to find, to unbraid, to accept, to question. They grieve, they grieve, they grieve, they grieve. We shift, we wield, we bury into light as ash across our faces. And one entry could be vertically. As we embrace the present, we begin to accept the grief we wield as ash across our faces. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
George.
That's all for me.
Thank you much. And as always, we welcome those that would like to say something for their birthday. Let's see. I'd also like to conclude with our traditional words of gratitude, following Tom's comment, but that's been somewhat of our traditions as well, because these programs don't happen just with a good wishing that they would. So the seen and the unseen, certainly Fred, Cassidy, Bill Anderson, Carl, Mike, and so many that have been part of the program committee, and we so appreciate you. And for everybody who's able to join us these weeks, we've appreciated having your attendance here as well. It's just been wonderful to be seeing each other. As Daryl said, we're good-looking people. Nice to see our faces. Good to see the smiles. And we look forward to the time when we can do more than just elbow bumping, but we'll take that for the meantime. Also following Tom's comment about staying positive and testing negative, I'd also like to offer another one. Don't give it and don't get it. So we look forward to seeing you here next week, same time, same station. And barring something unforeseen with our leader, John, he will be here back at the mic. In the meantime, I call this meeting to an end. I wish you the happiest and most safe weekend. Feel free to stay online as you can and enjoy conversation. Happy weekend to you all.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Hi, Sally.
Hi.
Did you realize that 2013 connection when you joined was the flood year?
You know, when we put that, we were talking about that like a month ago when this all started happening. I was like, oh my gosh, that's not even right. But you know, I guess that maybe we're adaptable, and that's why we got picked for these years.
Well, that's right. What is it? We're not given more than we can handle, and we have to figure out how to do it.
Well, I just think we're, you know, around here in Boulder, we're so lucky to be around very educated people who are, for the most part, taking this very seriously. And we have done a fabulous job of getting our incidents to be really, really small. And I think we live in a super lucky part of the country. And, you know, I worry for the fall and the winter when we have more tourists coming and stuff like that. But there's only, I think, Daryl, only one person in the hospital right now. Is that still correct? Oh, he might be gone. But there was only one person yesterday who was in the hospital, and they've tested a whole bunch of people. They're testing all the people before surgery, and they haven't found any. So I think they've had 13 out of 800 that were tested that were sick, and then 800 who are getting surgeries who tested and they didn't have any COVID. So it's the incidence very low. I think we're lucky.
No, people paid attention.
Yeah. Or is it just me and you? Who's on here?
No, it's 29 other people.
There's 29. Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'd like to know, Sally, can anybody just walk up now to the hospital to be tested?
Not quite. So if you want to be tested, you do have to do a virtual call-in with your doctor, then have a reason. So your reason can be as simple as, I'm going to go visit somebody who is immunocompromised and I'm worried, and I've been around people, hi Carl, and that I might have it, and I just want to know. I did do the antibody testing this past week, which you can get at Boulder Community Health, and that you can walk up and get. Because I was sick in February for about 3 weeks, and I thought for sure that's what I had, but no antibodies, so darn it. But I was hoping.
How much does the antibody test cost? And I think it's been told that it has to be paid for by insurance.
Yeah, I self-ordered, so I did cash pay, and it's $150.
Okay.
Which is probably really good expenditure of $150 if there's any question. And then if it's something that we've had in the past, and is it likely to have been part of that or not? So.
Yeah, and with what I do, I was just hoping that I'd already had it so that I wouldn't have to worry every day as much, but nope.
Looks like Juliet Harrington had just posted a note about it as well.
Oh, what'd she say?
129.
Quest
diagnostic.
All right. Any other questions out there?
I'd make a comment about Alessandro, the poem that you read. Sally, that just seemed such a beautiful one in connection to where we are, and it's a time of grief, literal and physical. And, that might be something that we would enjoy sharing, and maybe they can put on the rib or someplace.
Yeah, that would be.
It is also very interesting graphically how it's displayed. You see, it is in certain patterns, and this invites you to read also vertical down. I will send to you a PDF. Let's say I made a screenshot, so I can send you the screenshot if you just want to have a look. And there's another one as well from the same lady writer. It's called Obligations 1 in the same graphic style.
Great. I think Mark Stern had a question about if the testing at BCH was FTC approved.
FDA approved, yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And just another matter, I received the flag from the Tel Aviv Rotary Club for my visit there. So I have to share it virtually, Sally, but it's now in our possession.
What's on the front of that?
They have, it's the Rotary wheel and then two of their own insignias. And one is the old city in Jerusalem.
Neat.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, they were very kind to me, and we had a good dinner.
I think Juliet had another comment. I don't know if she's still on. Is Juliet, are you still on?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me? I just had two thoughts. One was, I remember there was about 5% that said they wanted to talk about COVID nearly every week. And I'm just wondering if we made something available for perhaps people that need a bit more assistance or information. It could be like this questioning, or it could be something extra for, some people need a bit more, I suppose, collegiate understanding through this, perhaps.
Juliet, this is Bill Anderson. I think that Cassidy has been posting all of the resources that we've identified and all the things that we've included in the coping programs. So I think that information is out there and accessible, but obviously there's a tension and a balance that we want to create to provide information that the majority of members will find useful without kind of providing information that the majority don't want. I would certainly encourage anybody that has outstanding questions on these things to communicate with us on it. And if there are interests in topics or programs, we've solicited that before, and we will definitely continue to ask folks about it. I'm actually working on perhaps a medical panel discussion for next week to talk kind of about some updates. Obviously, we've got to run that through the membership or through the programming committee first to make sure that that everyone's up for that plan. But I think soon we're going to do a follow-up medical panel. And I see Mark Stern's still on, so I'm trying to privately chat with him too. He's certainly among the folks in our club, one of the people who has spent, I believe, the most time studying this and reading the academic and medical literature that's out there. And so hopefully we'll be able to call upon folks like Mark to help all our members stay educated and informed with the most up-to-date information.
Thank you, Bill. Just a quick reply. I was actually referring to something different, keeping confidentiality, but I was aware of one person who was terribly missing the social contact. And I wasn't really talking about programs and information. So I don't know if there was a way, perhaps for a small cluster of people, if they want to get together in social distancing with masks on or something separate, but I'm talking about an emotional social connection that, from what I've heard directly, is very needed, but probably by a very small percentage of people.
Sorry, Juliet.
Sally, do you want to chime in on that one, or should I?
Oh, please, Marty.
Well, I'm thinking, Juliet, it made me think of the caring committee, because early on we had gone back through the list of those members who don't open their rib, for example, so therefore they wouldn't have the information to connect with their programs. And I've been thinking I need to talk to Jeannie Schlosslin, the co-chair, but seems to me it might be a good thing for us to pull another list and start making the calls. However, if you would be willing to send me some information of maybe suggesting people, if that would be comfortable.
Yes, I'll do that. That's totally fine.
Yeah, because I think I found early on with the Zoom meetings, it's just nice to see each other's faces. And folks like Sally are out and about and seeing people, and maybe Bill and others and Daryl, et cetera, et cetera. But if your whole schedule is uplifted or whatever, suspended, then you're not seeing people that you have. And I think just that we're social animals, as we keep being told, and we can be very social. And this adds a different dimension of how do we stay social and still stay safely apart. So I'd appreciate that if that's something you're comfortable in sharing, and we can work with Sally and others in Rotary to see what kind of support we could give.
And I have to apologize. I do need to leave now. I have a patient in about 5 minutes, but thank you all for today. I loved being with you.
Well, thank you. We so appreciate you. Looking forward to you. And do the others want to stay on or sign off? And we're at 1:26. So actually we're 4 minutes from the normal conclusion.
But thank you, Sally. Much appreciated.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Happy weekends.
Weekend.
You too, Marty. Stay out of trouble, Marty.
I'm doing my very best. I'm staying out of the papers. Well, no, I'm not. I'm writing in them. But we go out and howl every night at 8.